Can you convert an LLC to an S Corp? If so, what are the pros and cons? That's the question I'm answering today. Now, you may have heard of the benefits of an S Corp, and I have some other videos on that. If you're interested in those, you can check out the link in the description. But if you're thinking about having your LLC take advantage of the benefits of an S Corp, you're probably wondering, how do I do that? Do I have to start a brand new S Corp? Or is there a way to convert my LLC to an S Corp? That's what we're talking about today. Now, to cover that, I'll cover the difference between an LLC and an S Corp. We'll talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages at a high level. And then we'll talk about actually converting an LLC to an S Corp and some other options that are available. And then what is the process to doing that? I'm Aaron Hall. I'm an attorney for business owners and entrepreneurial companies. My goal with these educational videos is to help you spot issues to discuss with your attorney or your CPA or accountant. This isn't a replacement for having an attorney, so you can try to do this stuff yourself. But I do want to empower you with education so that you know the kinds of questions to ask and you can avoid common problems and legal pitfalls. You can also avoid expenses associated with legal mistakes. If you're a business owner and you haven't yet received my free cheat sheet, 7 Common Legal Mistakes Made by New Businesses, you can download that right now while you're listening at aaronhall.com/free. And that is a series of educational videos that helps you avoid some of the most common mistakes that business owners make. There's no charge to the videos. There's no charge to the checklist. The goal of this video is to try to help you avoid some of these problems yourself. And if you find this is helpful and you want more videos like this, just subscribe to this channel. Let's get into it. All right, so can you convert an LLC to an S Corp? Yes, you can. What is an LLC? LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. It is a particular type of legal entity that you can register under a state statute. Contrast that with an S Corp. You might be asking, what is an S Corp? An S Corp is a corporation registered under a state corporate statute. And then you file an election with the IRS that says, I don't want you to tax both the corporation and me. I want the corporation to become a pass-through entity, ignored for tax purposes, and just tax me as the business owner. So by electing to have your corporation taxed as an S Corp under Subchapter S, you are avoiding double taxation at the corporate level and the shareholder level, and you're just having all the proceeds, all the profit flow through to you as a shareholder, and you get taxed once for income tax at the shareholder level. That's what an S Corp is. Who might want to convert an LLC to an S Corp? Well, quite simply, it would be any business owner who wants to take advantage of the tax benefits available to an S Corp. This relates to payroll tax and self-employment tax, essentially saving 15% of the profit distributions each year after accounting for wages paid out to the owner for work being provided by the owner. All right, so let's get into that a little deeper. What are the advantages of converting from an LLC to an S Corp? Imagine you are an LLC owner and you are generating $100,000 of profit each year. So for example, you might have a $300,000 income, $200,000 in expenses, and so at the end of the day, you have $1,000 in profit. That's your take-home pay. In an LLC, you pay about 15% self-employment tax. Now that's not income tax. That's a whole separate category. You'll have to pay that too. But you'll pay 15% self-employment tax on $100,000. That's $15,000 per year in self-employment tax. But with an S Corp, there's a tax savings. Let's say, for example, that you could hire somebody to do your job for $60,000 a year. Well, that means you in an S Corp can pay yourself $60,000 in wages. That $60,000 is subject to the 15% tax, but the remaining $40,000, which isn't going for wages, that's just a profit distribution to you. That $40,000 is free of the self-employment tax or payroll tax. Whether you call it self-employment tax or payroll tax, it doesn't matter. It's about 15%. After you've paid yourself for wages in an S corporation, the additional proceeds you get, called profit distributions, are free of the 15% payroll tax. So think about that. If you had $40,000 in profit distributions times 15%, that's $6,000 per year that you are saving. That's not a deduction or an exemption. That's $6,000 back in your pocket as a business owner by being taxed as an S corporation instead of an LLC. Now, every scenario is different. It might be more or less than $6,000. I had a multi-owner business, and each owner was able to save $11,000 a year in payroll tax or self-employment tax by changing from an LLC to an S Corp. So think about that. If there are two owners, that's $22,000 more per year in their pocket every single year. That's a lot of money. That illustrates the advantages of being taxed as an S Corp instead of an LLC. Now, if you don't have significant profits, an LLC may not be beneficial. And again, in the description below, you can click on a link. I have another video on figuring out LLC versus S Corp. The focus of this video today is, can you convert from an LLC to an S Corp, and what are the pros and cons? All right, what are the disadvantages of converting from an LLC to an S Corp? Well, if you're taxed as an S Corp, you have to report to the IRS every quarter. And you have to pay taxes, estimated taxes, every quarter. Now, if you already have employees and you're paying payroll, you're already doing that. So that's not a significant downside or disadvantage. But that is probably the largest disadvantage of being taxed as an S Corp. There are a couple other in unique situations which we'll talk about a little bit later. By the way, if you are in an LLC and you're having to pay that 15% self-employment tax at the end of the year, it means you're having to set aside money for that throughout the year. It might be said that having to pay S Corp taxes quarterly is a benefit or an advantage rather than a disadvantage, because you make sure you come up with that money on a quarterly basis and you're not having to worry about coming up with all the money for the IRS at the end of the year like you would in an LLC. All right, what are the steps of converting from an LLC to an S Corp? You have two options. Option number one is the easiest and cheapest. An LLC can elect to be taxed as an S Corp simply by filing a form with the IRS, and you can do it yourself. You can have your CPA do it. The CPAs might do it for free if they're already doing other work for you, or may charge less than $100 on average. So think about that. That's a very quick and easy thing to do. The more complicated and expensive way is to convert your LLC to an S Corp. And you must do that by starting an S Corp and then filing papers to merge the LLC with the S Corp, where the S Corp swallows and envelops the LLC. Essentially, in that merger, the S Corp is the surviving entity and the LLC is swallowed and no longer exists. That's another way to do it. If you do it that way, you only will have an S Corp. You will no longer have an LLC. So to summarize, there are two ways to convert an LLC to an S Corp. One is just to have your LLC taxed as an S Corp, and you do that by filing a form with the IRS. The second way, which is more expensive and time consuming, is creating a corporation. You then file merger documents with the state to have the LLC and the S Corp merge, and the S Corp takes over. And then, of course, you need to file with the IRS to have that corporation taxed as an S Corp. Is there a best time to convert an LLC to an S Corp? Yes, there is. Essentially, it's either in the very first days of setting up an LLC, or the IRS says you can do it by March 15th, or the first 75 days of a calendar year in which it is to apply. So if it's October and you want to be taxed as an S Corp, you can file the paperwork, but it doesn't take effect until the next calendar year. But if it's January or February and you file paperwork to be taxed as an S Corp, it will take effect in that calendar year starting on January 1st. Are there tax benefits to converting an LLC to an S Corp? Quite simply, yes, in many cases. If you're a small LLC, typically rule of thumb is if you're earning less than $50,000 a year in profits, it may not be worth being taxed as an S Corp. But if you are earning more than $50,000 a year in profits, again, that's just a rule of thumb, it is probably going to save you money on self-employment tax or payroll tax. The specific circumstances will vary. It's important to speak with a tax professional to figure out whether an S Corp would save you money. I recommend a CPA or a business attorney licensed in your state. Honestly, I'd probably start with the CPAs. CPAs live and breathe numbers, and they are outstanding at these sorts of issues. Any sort of CPA that deals with small business. Are there tax consequences of converting an LLC to an S corporation? The main downside is that you'll have to file quarterly tax returns and make payments based on those returns to the government. That's the most significant downside, but often that is offset by the significant tax benefits of having your LLC taxed as an S Corp. Are there any tax implications for the owners of the LLC during the process of converting from an LLC to an S Corp? The short answer is no. Aside from the long-term tax impact, there's no short-term impact. In other words, during the process, you don't have to worry about anything extra. And I do recommend that you work with a CPA or perhaps a business attorney in doing this process. What happens to the existing LLC agreements and contracts after the conversion to an S corporation? Well, it depends on how you did the conversion. If your LLC elects to be taxed as an S corporation, then the LLC operating agreement remains in effect. But if your LLC was merged with an S corporation, then the shareholder agreement in that new S corporation is what will prevail and guide the governance and the rights of the business and the business owners. How does the management structure of an LLC differ from an S corporation? If you are a single owner LLC, it's not going to change at all if you become a single owner S corporation. No difference whatsoever. But if you have multiple owners, there may be differences in how voting is done and how control is established. If you have multiple owners in your business, I'd highly recommend you work with a business attorney. That attorney might even represent the business, but explain to the business owners what's changing, if anything, when converting from an LLC to an S corporation. There might be a lot of things. Can an LLC have foreign owners? Well, resident aliens may own an LLC and an S Corp. A non-resident alien may not be a shareholder in an S corporation, but a non-resident alien may own an LLC. So, if you're a resident alien, no problem. You can own either. If you're a non-resident alien, that's where you're going to have trouble owning an S corporation. There are some other ownership restrictions on S corporations related to trusts and rare circumstances that I won't get into here. So that's where you're going to need to work with a business attorney in your state. So I will tell you this though, if you are wanting to elect to be taxed as an S corporation, the owners of your LLC need to qualify as though they were owners of an S corporation. In other words, if the IRS has certain requirements for S corporations and you don't meet them in your LLC, then your LLC does not qualify to be taxed as an S corporation. Are there any restrictions on the ownership of an LLC? Ownership of LLC is broadly permitted. In other words, an LLC can be owned by a corporation that's not in the United States. There might be multiple owners. In other words, an LLC is broadly permitted as an entity without the narrow restrictions that apply to an S corporation. What is the timeline for converting from an LLC to an S corporation? In order for it to have effect in a calendar year, you need to file the paperwork with the IRS within the first 75 days. That means by March 15th. What is the impact of the conversion on the company's legal status and operations? All right, so let's say you have an LLC and it converts to be taxed as an S Corp. If you're a single owner LLC, no difference. If you're a multiple owner LLC, so like you have 2 or 3 owners and now you're being taxed as an S Corp, you'll want to work with a business attorney to find out how in your situation your rights may have changed or may need to be changed under the LLC operating agreement. If you have an S corporation, you're going to be governed under the corporate law in your state as it relates to the rights of shareholders and voting and all the other issues covered by the corporate statutes. So if you convert from an LLC to an S Corp by having a merger of 2 entities and the S Corp takes over the LLC and is a surviving entity, you're going to be governed under the corporate statute. Are there any legal and regulatory requirements to be met during the conversion process from an LLC to an S corporation? Yes. You typically need to at least file paperwork with the federal and state taxing authorities to notify them of the change. Now, you may not have to do that immediately. For example, you might file the notice with the IRS to elect to be taxed as an S Corp, but you may be able to wait some time in your state and do that notice to the state at the next tax reporting date. So to answer that question more specifically, it will depend on your state, and you should work with a CPA who works with small businesses in order to figure out what do you need to report to your state when you convert from being taxed as an LLC to being taxed as an S Corp. All right, we covered a lot here. This is all part of a series of videos I'm providing to the public for free to help you as a business owner avoid legal problems for your company. Why? Because legal problems are stressful and frustrating. They're distracting. They prevent you from doing what you love, which is being an entrepreneur, solving a problem in the world, and making a difference in people's lives. With legal problems, you end up getting distracted with all the issues and expense of attorneys and all the stress that goes along with legal problems. So if you haven't yet downloaded the 7 common legal mistakes made by new businesses, it's a PDF. Go get that at aaronhall.com/free. And you'll also get as a bonus a series of videos that are only available to people who subscribe. Again, it's free. But these videos will help explain from an educational standpoint how you can avoid these 7 issues. And I'm not selling these 7 videos. It's entirely for free. And you can use this to educate yourself on how to speak with a business attorney in your state about how to avoid these problems. Why? Because I want your company to excel, and I want you to be free from the distraction and the stress associated with legal trouble. If you have questions about today, feel free to put them in the comments section below. I use those comments to provide ideas for future videos, and sometimes I even can provide quick answers to them. If you like this video, feel free to rate it and give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like more educational videos like this for business owners, you're welcome to subscribe to this free educational content on YouTube. In our next video, we'll be talking about the opposite topic, which is converting from an S Corp to an LLC. If you want to get that, subscribe. And feel free to check out the description section below, which has some links to some additional information you might find helpful.